Thank you, friends, for being here. This morning you heard a couple of harsh words about publishers, how tyrannical they are, and how they alter titles, how they cut pages, and how ruthless they are when it comes to shaping what they want. It is true that it's not possible to accommodate all the stakeholders in publishing as an editor, as a publishing team goes ahead. Also, today's publishing is not what it used to be in the old days when it was extremely and wholly driven by editorial choice and preference. It was a much slower profession. Today, there's a growl of serious money about publishing. The marketing division, the salespeople have a very big say. They're not always as well informed as editors. So there are a number of things that come into play. And in a huge, diverse market such as India, where the English language publishing was imported, a system inherited from Britain, and then there are ingenuity and Indian genius fused with that. So I have here publishers, editors from three very big publishing houses. Far left is Abhivyakti Singh from the French giant Hachette India. And then there's Manasi Subramaniam of Penguin. She's the head of publishing. At last we have a South Indian in some power, and that too a woman, and a Tamilian, I'm happy to say. I have on my left the Bengali mafia, Sharmila Guha. For many years, Delhi was literally controlled by those who came, who passed out of the very sophisticated colleges and schools of Calcutta from Shantiniketan. And they kind of set the trend. So I'm going to ask each of my panelists to talk about two or three things. One, what the change that they've seen over the last 5 or 6 years, because things have altered very rapidly, both with these huge prizes now available for publishing. Authors have suddenly become very trendy. And you may have noticed in your own circles that nearly everybody wants to publish a book. It could be a cookery book, it could be something about exercise, it could be staying well, it could be advising parents. Everybody wants to advise someone. In the Ooty Literature Festival 5 or 6 years ago, there was somebody who had done a book on yoga and fitness, and she was determined to have more than one session for her book. And she came and lobbied with me. And I said, look, this is a festival for writers, for people who write stories, who write poems. It's not for fitness books. But she just didn't see the point. So, point one, how things have changed. Point two, what things were like when they joined publishing, and what they would like to change, and what has not changed. So I'd like to start with the youngest on the team, Abhivyakti Singh of Hachette, India. All of them are from Delhi. Delhi is the publishing center, and you have there, smiling, the head of the Jaipur Literature Festival Translation Wing, Jaipur Bookmark. Manisha, could you stand up, please? She's come all the way from Delhi. She literally organizes and orchestrates the discussions about translation in the Jaipur Literature Festival, which is known as the biggest literary book party in the world. So, Abhi, please.
Yeah, sure.
I'd also like to say that they're all part of the TNTV group of collaborators and are committed to publishing translations of Tamil works. Thank you.
Hello, Vanakkam everybody. I'm Abhivyakti. So speaking of what has changed, or I think we can begin with what the market is now and then we can address the changes. First of all, India that we've observed is a primarily non-fiction led market. It's a very aspirational market. literary fiction has been hard to break out, especially for debut authors in recent years. Um, there could be many reasons as to why, but we believe that there's low bibliodiversity, as in people are not reading widely or as many authors as they should. We are still concerned with the deep backlist titles, the classics. So breaking out a new talent on the bookshelves has been a bit of a challenge. So that is what we've observed in the last few years, that it's been a challenge of sorts. As for non-fiction titles or categories that continuously do well, we have biographies, we have business books, we have self-helps that are doing quite well. So for, say, an Indra Nooyi, who's our author, or a Vishwanathan Anand, who's our author, it's not very hard to please the reader. We do tend to find readership rather easily for their books. But for a new talent, brand new talent, I think it's a little hard just to make a case for them right now in the market that we have. I suppose that answers most of it, but would you like me to address anything else, Minnie? Yes, sure.
Same question. So, okay. In terms of what has changed, let me say one of the good things that has changed. When I joined publishing, which was a very long time ago, I think we were still a market that relied very heavily on validation from the West. We were still the country which had produced Booker Prize winning authors and Pulitzer Prize winning authors. And, the things that came as a badge of honor were, Jhumpa Lahiri wins the Pulitzer Prize, or Siddhartha Mukherjee wins the Pulitzer Prize, Arundhati Roy wins the Booker Prize, Salman Rushdie wins the Booker Prize. These things were the reason that Indian publishing was able to make its mark. What has changed now, and I'm cut to about 15 years later, we are a market that's so self-sufficient that we do not need that kind of validation anymore. I am always reminded that our readers are in India, our writers are in India, and these couple of awards that come in from the West, of course, there is great joy when a Geetanjali Shri goes and wins the Booker a couple of years ago and things like that. But really, our readers are here and our validation has to come from here. So the proliferation of literary festivals, I think, has been good. The Indian awards ecosystem has been incredibly robust. It has helped a lot. What it has also done is it has brought translations to the forefront. And again, when I talk about self-sufficiency, in India, we publish approximately I think in the range of 20 to 25,000 books a year across all languages. There's so much translation work to be done in India. We do not need books to come in from other language, from like French or German or Spanish or any of those languages, because there is so much work to be done in India. So for me, one of the good things that has changed is this model of very inward-looking self-sufficiency that I think has created a very robust ecosystem. That's the good. Some things have changed in ways that I'm not sure that I'm fully on board with. One of those things is what you alluded to a little bit, which is that I think literature has stopped being one of those things that you do purely for pleasure. I read novels just for the fun of it, but right now, you use the word aspirational. That is the market. The market wants to see what it can learn from something. So why does a yoga book work? Because everyone aspires to be fit. Why do self-help books work? Why do business books work? It's because it is an aspirational market. And so for me, I mean, if I could pinpoint a reason for all of this, it is that we've stopped looking at literature as something purely for pleasure and started looking at it in the race for productivity.
You're going to hear from Oxford University Press, the biggest university press in the world. I believe all the other university presses put together are not as big as Oxford. So here's Oxford for you.
Thank you, ma'am. Lots of things have changed for the good and the bad, like you said. But from the validation of the West part, I belong to, like ma'am said, a very large university press, which is British University Press. We did take a lot of our material from the West first and then started publishing in India. But I think from the validation point of view and from the translation of literature point of view, we were far ahead from the turn of the millennium. We started a robust publishing program and we did have a lot of translations of Indian works that we did in Oxford. The one thing that has changed is that the good thing that has happened is people are still reading more even after the COVID pandemic, where we saw that, books were not selling and we thought that, the readership is going to die out. As soon as we started hitting the markets again, we've realized that people are reading a lot more. So it's good news for publishing industry and publishers. The one thing that has happened is everyone wants to publish, and there is not a very clear understanding as to what you want to publish in. So I get publishing manuscripts for fitness, which we don't publish in. We publish in educational material. We are the largest producers of dictionaries in the world. We publish literature. We don't publish a lot of things, but we do still get manuscripts in them. So I think with social media, with AI, a lot of things has happened that people think that they can write. A lot of people are coming forward with a lot of new ideas. But the not so good part is that a lot of those things can't be published. And the understanding of what can be published and cannot be published is a little blurred right now, and that has changed drastically in the past 5 years. So that's not so good thing that I see as a change.
Thank you. The future of publishing lies in the minds and the impressions made on children, those who are between the ages, let's say 6 to 10, 6 to 12. In the early years, they have no choice at all about what they read because their parents and teachers tell them what to read. Have you seen any kind of a shift there? AI can now produce in a day or 2 days what took a writer and an illustrator 3 or 4 weeks to do, perhaps even more. How do you see this impacting your work? And that really talented artists, for instance, those who specialize in graphic designs, graphic books. Could you talk about these things? Because that's part of the future. And yes. All of you have children's divisions as well, don't you?
Yes. So what we've noticed at our company is that evidently in the industry, there's a huge gap in the young adult segment overall in the country. What it has done is that there is no more a bridge between middle grade books and new adult fiction and then normal adult trade, regular adult trade that we see. So for more of young adult books to come out, both fiction and non-fiction, and those are the endeavors that we have in place at our company. But that is sort of the basic premise of it, because we find so many young readers falling off the wagon just because they do not have indigenous books and storytelling that address their immediate needs as readers. So they fall back on import titles, which is fine, but there aren't as many, I'd say, closer cultural interactions there as needed. And we finally find these kids growing up, joining the workforce, and then again falling back on non-fiction titles, the self-helps, the business books, etc., to grow further. Now, that is not bad at all, but what I think we are losing here is a very natural readership for fiction. And coming back to the point of graphic designers and illustrators, we work with a plethora of them, and they're such talented artists. And it's just sad to see that since there is no, I wouldn't say there is no demand at all, but there isn't enough. There hasn't been those number of productions that we'd like to do, those many artists that we'd like to have on board for the books that we want to do. So I think if we are to address the need of volume, we'll need similar interest from our readership, and not to put the entire onus on them, because the entire ecosystem functions to support that. But we do think that if we have more young adult fiction, we would be able to address those needs better.
Answer your wish list.
Children's publishing in a long time.
Okay, what's your wish list? Let me ask you that. You, Mansi.
My wish
Yeah,
list
your
for...
wish list. What would you like to publish? How would you like to see things move?
I mean, I was bowing out of this question because I haven't worked in children's publishing in about 12 years. But if you ask me what my wish list is on the subject of children's publishing, I would love to see more reading lists in which are fiction in the children's summer reading program, for example. I would love to see novels being like students being asked to read novels over the summer and come back and talk about them. I think the only way to spread the love of reading is to spread it as a joyful activity.
Okay, wish list for adults. What's the kind of book that you right now, what have you been dreaming of on your flight? What would you like to publish?
I'll come back to that.
Okay.
So yes, we publish a lot of educational material for schools, for children's schools, and in the UK we do publish a lot of readers for children. One of the things that we are using to combat AI and the issues that come with it, whether it's affecting the manuscripts, the literary pieces that are coming out, or the design element, is that we have very stringent policies in place. We do not allow the use of AI in any kind of content development, design development, or any kind of design element. So everything that we do, our authors are screened, our manuscripts are screened. So I think that's a very good thing because that gives you authenticity. And in terms of design and the graphic element also, it helps foster the kind of talent that you want to see. And we have done that very well because of the policies that are in place, put in place by the press.
In cement.
In cement, as you know.
I think what I'd love to see more of and haven't seen in a long time is a really funny novel. I haven't read a really funny novel in a long time.
Onam in an IT was like that. Thank you. Anything else, or shall we throw it open to the... Yes.
Actually, I just was burning to say something when you started talking about children's publishing, and she talked about aspirational publishing and the fact that fiction seems to have fallen off the map somewhere. I think for the future, if we actually want to nurture a readership of new readers, unless there's good fiction being written in Indian languages, you're not going to get new readers. You are going to continue to get people who want to learn English, so therefore they will read aspirational books. If for the middle grade as well as the young reader, young adult category, if you had novels or books in Hindi, Urdu, Tamil, Kannada, Marathi, Bangla, you name it, you will actually nurture the new readers who are coming to school for the first time. So I think it's very important to look
I
at
think
that.
Eklavya is doing a lot of good work, and Room to Read is doing a lot of good work.
So is Pratham Books. That's
yes,
not
exactly.
the point.
So,
but you know, I think in the larger ecosystem, if we are talking about nurturing new readers for the future, and we're looking at publishing for the future, we can't just keep talking about English. We
No, of
have to
course.
look at the language diversity in the country and the content that is being created for children in that. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you all. Now, Abhivyakti, you mentioned about the decline of fiction, but at the same time, in terms of publishing space, even for young children and young adults, for example, a book like Sophie's World, written by a teacher from Norway, and it describes thought and that kind of knowledge space. It is also a challenge for publishers to create that kind of a knowledge space in a fun-like manner. So what is your thought on creating those kind of books?
So I'm an adult read, but that's a terrific question for our children's publisher, who couldn't be here. But from what I understand, since we all work on the same floor, and we hear the chatter, from what I understand, I think the endeavors are in place to, achieve the space which is fun, which is educational, which is knowledgeable. And we have very indigenous sort of storytelling where, our immediate emotional needs of children that age are met with. For that to happen, I think we need more writers, as she said, from different languages. We need more experiences. We need willing publishers to publish those, sometimes at the cost of their P&Ls, because, just to take it off the ground, there would be some initial investment required, I feel. And, it would take years. I think it's not something that could be achieved in a short span. It's a cultural shift that we're asking for here. So in the next decade or so, with the kind of people I work with, I only see a lot of potential and optimism there. That could be done, but it remains to be seen how it pans out industry-wide. But definitely, our children's department has pushed out a lot of interesting titles in picture books, in middle grade, in YA of late, because we do think that the kind of books that they read from our import list, they would also be very much willing to read from our local list. From our authors who have been born and bred here and have stories to tell. So I think more of that is what we're trying to do. And in the next decade or so, I think we'll see results.
Good afternoon, madam. One very important area which I feel, especially for children between 10 to 14, is popular science books, where from fiction he goes to science, and many of the advanced science concepts can be introduced by popular science books. But that space is not occupied in our India. In my opinion, I have seen a lot of books, something like popular mechanics or even popular science, physics, chemistry, and even rocket science. There is no much interest in that particular area. Can you throw some light
So
on
just to answer that, not a question, but I know that you were just talking about it. This is something that OUP is very interested in, and we are exploring ways to do that because, like I said, we do publish in education. And one of the things that we did notice was that while we have literacy programs, where literary readers are used to teach students how to read and then eventually write and speak, there is no connecting reader for science. So that is something that we are very interested in and exploring. So maybe in a couple of years, we'll have something to that effect.
The late M.T. Vasudevan Nair said in one of his lectures that he received a letter from someone saying, no work of fiction, no novel has been written about the pappadam community, those who make pappadams. Did Mr. Nair have any tips for him on how to write this novel? So he said, in the lecture, he said, I know that no one can actually teach another person how to write. My answer always, when I talk to youngsters or to faculty or whatever, is the only way to learn how to write a good story, is to write a good story and to keep writing. So the other thing I think publishers could do, and the one thing I want to say about publishing is, it's such a mysterious sort of industry and profession. Publishers have a sort of mythical status almost. People don't know how to reach them. Very often when you send a manuscript, you never get a response. That's because at least 50 manuscripts reach a publisher every day. No one can handle so many scripts. There's a lot of, there's a sort of obfuscation around the industry. How to get a book published, only if you know someone. And here the literary agent plays a very sort of critical role. They help the author or the translator, as the case may be, to get a good deal, and they know how to pitch a book. Sometimes someone might have a very good book, but not know how to talk about it to a publisher. And most writers are quite diffident. They don't feel like, they think they're promoting themselves, or how will it look if I write like this? They feel a little embarrassed also to promote themselves. These are some of the problems of, no publishers, it's not possible to know everything about every area in the possibility of the potential that lies in the market. So this link of publisher, editor, writer, and of course the reading market, the market itself. This is a really hidden. These sort of ratios are difficult to pin down and to describe. What's the biggest mistake you've made in your career? I'll tell you 2 mistakes I made. One was a fabulous novel by Kritika called Vasaveshwaram. This was 25 years ago, about a beautiful woman in a village, and her husband neglects her and all sorts of things. So I thought I'd found the perfect picture for the cover. It was a Ravi Varma painting, and everybody admired it. And the book was printed. Those days, there was no possibility of sending something on an email. It didn't strike me to send I was so confident about that cover that I didn't send the printout to the translator. When the translator saw the cover, he wanted to kill me because Ravi Varma's models were all Maharashtrian women, and this woman had the palla of the sari over her head, whereas in Tamil Nadu, that is a sign of widowhood, which is completely wrong for the book. It didn't strike me. So that's the biggest boo-boo I ever made. What about you?
I can't talk about it.
Okay. Too many. Anything else you'd like to talk about? The terrible creature, the editor. How do you handle your editors? The hidden hand. Any other questions? Anyone here who's writing a book, writing a script? Dinesh, why don't you come and share something about your publishing adventures? We're all women over here, so I'm requesting Dinesh Sinha, who has the maximum number of translations from Tamil for the TNTB. Would you share your experiences in exploring the southern market, which you've been very successful in?
Yeah, I think the whole effort has been very successful. We have been able to engage many authors, many from Imayam to Jayamohan to Appadurai Muthulingam, and we have, very well-known authors on our list, and translators have been very cooperative and very, what should I say, they have understood our requirements and our inputs. So overall, and TNTV has helped us a lot in promoting and enlarging the series list. Thank you CIBF and TNTV for that.
Thank you. From Kattabomman to Imayam, from Indrapat Sarthi, Chudamani Raghavan, Dinesh has done a very big range, and we hope he will continue to do that. If anyone has any questions, or shall we wrap up? What's the time? How are we doing for time?
We have 15 minutes.
Another 15 minutes? Is there anything anyone would like to talk about in publishing? No? Perfect understanding?
So from what you have shared with us, I understood that it's not a very friendly time to experiment with writing.
It's never a friendly time because
But
people
now
prefer
especially.
safe markets.
Yeah. So how do you envision what do you think the future holds, since we are speaking about publishing for the future? And also, I'm curious to understand how AI figures in all this. It's the buzzword today, and how are publishers trying to incorporate AI in either in their proofreading processes or even in the creative process? Is there a space for that? Yeah.
So I'll take that first. So 2 things. I'll answer your AI question first. So I already said that we tackle it with very stringent policies. In the creative process, we don't use AI at all. What we do use AI for is the plagiarism checks. So, and a lot of our marketing efforts, etc., that is done by AI, and that's allowed. No content creation, etc., is allowed. So that is something that I think individual publishers need to take a call on based on their policies and their strategies. The other thing that I see changing for the good, and that's a strategy that we are following at OUP, is more Indian language publishing. That's something that the government is also pushing for. And it's not just Tamil, it's all languages that we are focusing on. So we currently publish in 13 Indian languages, and we do want to expand to more. So Indian language publishing is something that we are going to focus on as part of our strategy, and that is something that is very important in the coming 3 to 5 years at least.
I can also talk a little bit about AI because I've been very curious myself and interested in seeing where this will take us. So we've, of course, had a lot of people approach us with editorial software, and largely more out of curiosity than anything else, I've personally tried out a lot of them. They're not there yet in terms of what I would expect out of an editorial software, but they're getting there. And I think that we should be prepared for that. If I can very succinctly sum up what I think should be our approach towards AI in the creative field, it is start with a human, end with a human. The process needs to be initiated by a human being, and it needs to be closed out by a human being, which means that AI can never, should never have complete creative autonomy over any part of the process. But it is, I mean, I don't have blinders on about the fact that AI is coming for us all. In terms of what I am worried about plagiarism. Deeply, deeply worried about plagiarism, because AI picks up information from all kinds of sources, and it does so with impunity. I mean, very often it hallucinates. I think that is one thing, but it picks up so much material from sources that should be copyrighted, and writers do not get compensated adequately for their intellectual property, which is being used by AI in order very often to generate profit. That is something I worry about, and that is something that I think only policy can solve. I think as we are looking towards the future, that is something that policy should take cognizance of and be very smart about. On the subject of other things that I'm worried about for the future of the publishing industry, in India in particular, I worry about piracy. I cannot tell you the number of times I myself have received PDFs of books that I have published on WhatsApp once it becomes a little bit popular. These are things I do think we should sit up and pay a little bit of attention to. To your first question, which is about is it a friendly time or not a friendly time to experiment, if you're really experimenting, then it will never be a friendly time. But that is why it's an experiment. If it was a friendly time, then it wouldn't be an experiment. It would be convention. So I think in order to be bold and experimental, one has to go against the tide. And by definition, that involves an unfriendly atmosphere towards it, but that's what makes it fun.
A lot of good advice has come your way. I don't know what I can add to it. But to the point of AI, I can say that we have strict policies in place where we cannot use it for creative or editorial purposes. For operational purposes, it is not completely disallowed, but I have not seen any of the team members getting into it. I think there's a lot of hesitancy towards it, and we also do not really want to get into it. But what in the next 10 years looks likely is that we are going to get a lot of manuscripts that would be hard to tell apart from if it is a machine-driven manuscript or it is written by a human being. I think those are the distinctions that we need to make clear for ourselves as we grow into this profession. And as for the future of where the industry is headed, I really do hope that there's more curiosity towards fiction, because what we have registered is that earlier, when a particular book from a segment used to do well, the entire segment would do well. Like when a Twilight was published, the entire paranormal romance unit started doing well. When Harry Potter came into the scene, the entire children's fiction started doing well. But that is not the case anymore. So like if a silent patient does well, it does not mean that the ancillary authors in books also do well. It could be pegged down to that we do not have the natural curiosity to hunt for books, to hunt for authors or comparable titles. That I think, as readers, as publishers, we can help improve and, fund that ecosystem where fiction takes the center stage again. And, we have more authors, more illustrious writing that, could be the talk of import. So I think that is where I hope the conversation goes in the next decade or so. But coming back to the first point as to AI, a lot of hesitancy is what I've registered, but often it does not look too optimistic if you, really go deep into the conversation happening online.
Thank you. Shall we wind up? Yes?
Thank you. We can reserve one more. Okay.
Thank you. It is so encouraging that you are stimulating a conversation. Just inspired by your comment, the kind of centrality you are posing to the fiction. Now, does it require a rethinking? Because the future requires a kind of a multi-field, ecosystem of why are you placing so much on the fiction? For example, poetry and philosophical works, and and that kind of an emphasis. This is my first query. Secondly, in terms of challenges, you mentioned about translation. Now, what kind of initiatives you have done some work in publishing in Indian languages, but what kind of still dedicated effort that we need to put into translation as well as publishing in our Indian languages? Because even in Oxford University Press, your publication in the Indian languages, it seems, does not create a popular register. I know as a social scientist, a friend of mine, his book has been published in Hindi. But in what way you can generate that kind of space so that OUP books in mother languages are also, they create a ripple.
I'll address the question to me first, and then I can pass on the mic. So for fiction, poetry can come under that umbrella. So, that is something that we do have. We have 2 poetry collections coming out in the next 2 years by debut poets. Debut as in for trade publishing. They have been publishing for a while, but not poetry per se and not in trade publishing per se. So we are going to do that. So poetry is very much key. To your point about me harboring fiction, I think that's a complete personal bias, and I and I cannot defend that because I do love reading literary fiction, and I hope I can read more of by Indian writers. So I think that is where editorial taste comes into fruition, and how it defines our list and how it defines the ethos of the kind of books that we'd like to put out. It is not a company byline, but something that I hope I see more of as years come by. To your point for translations, I think our partnership with TNTB, which has been, quite prestigious for us, and we really hope that, it solidifies further and other state boards also take cues. And I think this is quite impressive what, we have going on here, that people value the indigenous regional literature so much that, there's an entire setup, a unit, an ecosystem that facilitates that. And I hope other state boards also take cues, and that also sort of supplements our ambitions that we have with translations as trade publishers. I'll pass on the mic.
So to answer your question about Indian language publishing, so we do Indian language publishing not just in the literary space, but also in the education space. And I know you spoke about the social sciences, and we did have a translation program where a lot of our social science books in the academic space was translated into Indian languages, Bengali, Hindi. What we're trying to do now is in the education space particularly, and in the lexical space, we publish in 13 Indian languages. We publish 13 Indian languages dictionaries in India. So that helps a lot of school students learn both their mother language as well as English, and then use it in schoolwork and eventually literary works. That is one aspect of publishing where we are doing Indian language publishing. The other one is we do want to partner we do partner with several governments for Indian language publishing. We've worked with the government of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh for Sanskrit. We are working with TNTB for, etymology, for other translations of literary fiction as well as other things. We hope that a lot of our English academic work can also be translated to Tamil. That's something that we've been exploring and discussing, so that, the social sciences can also be covered. And social scientists can actually get access to a lot of global material in their mother tongue. So hopefully someday, maybe in the near future, we can do that.
Thank you. It's been a largely
We'll
editorial
reserve any
discussion.
further questions for an offline discussion. Thanks to all the illustrious panelists. Our
Thank you.